Thank you, guys. Oh my gosh. Well, but what a bunch of toxic and problematic Bernie bros. You all should be ashamed of yourselves. I bet some of you have even tweeted out animal emojis at other candidates. I can't believe it. No, seriously though, a lot of Pete supporters in the room. High hopes, that's what we're feeling. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Marilyn and Dino and the whole crew here for inviting me here today. It's truly a privilege and a pleasure and an honor. And how many of you all do watch Rising? How many risers in the? All right, got a good number here. I want to tell you that, Marilyn just shared a little bit of what the show meant to her when she was in Iowa. I hear from many of you every day about what the show means to you. And I just want to share with you quickly that the show means a lot to me too, and you all mean a lot to me and also to Sagar as well, because like many of you probably, I felt very alone in my politics often, right? I was on cable news watching these people going like, what are you thinking? How am I seeing the world so differently than what's unfolding around me in the news media? And when I was watching, political news coverage and reading the Post and reading the Times and all of this, it was like, where are my people? Am I the only one who feels this way, who thinks this way, who believes in these things, who has faith in these things? And so when we started doing Rising, and instantly, when we posted it to YouTube and suddenly there was this explosion of energy around it, and you all started posting comments and sharing segments that were meaningful to you, I just can't tell you how much it meant to me to feel like and really see and be able to actualize and visualize this whole community around the type of politics that we all believe in, which are not radical, right? And are not a minority. They're not a fringe view. Believing that working class people, that all people in our society in a wealthy nation deserve basic dignity and humanity, this is not a radical view. It's a majority view. But it is so seldom represented that I can't tell you how meaningful it's been to me to see the energy that sprung up around this, to see the way that you all have responded to the book, bestseller on Amazon, bestseller at Barnes & Noble. It's like the best ever FU to Neera Tanden, the fact that that book is a bestseller. Before I forget, I want to also make a pitch. Look, not all DSA chapters are created equal, but all DSA chapters are doing the incredible groundwork and are the foot soldiers. But this chapter is an incredible chapter. Did you all hear those numbers? 384 new canvassers trained. That's astonishing. So don't leave here today if you are not a member without becoming a member, because Bernie Sanders or AOC or whoever can't do this alone, guys. They can't do it alone, right? No person is big enough to carry a movement on their shoulders. You all have been the foot soldiers doing the work, out there believing before there even was a Bernie Sanders on the national scene, right? Believing in this kind of politics, believing that working class people can in this country be treated with dignity and respect. You all have been organizing and doing the work, and I want to personally thank you so very much for that belief and that persistence and that struggle, which we know was only just getting started now, is only just getting started even if Bernie Sanders gets into the White House. And I want to thank you all so much. Give yourselves a round of applause for the incredible work that you're putting in. It's pretty amazing, guys. It's pretty incredible. Here we are today, South Carolina primary. And yes, I've looked at the polls. The polls are tough, although I will say I spoke to Chuck Rocha, who many of you probably seen on our show. He's down there on the ground, and he says that turnout is up, so an encouraging sign. We do need to prepare ourselves, though, that this could be the first loss. Think about that, the first loss for Bernie Sanders this cycle. And I want to emphasize that. Think about if you put yourself in your own shoes a year ago, and you told yourself then that a year from now, we would have won Iowa, because, when you get the most votes, I call that a win, would have won New Hampshire, would have dominated in Nevada with astonishing numbers, more than doubling the pathetically distant second place Joe Biden, which, by the way, I think this crowd here is larger than any Joe Biden rally that's unfolded this cycle. And we're coming into South Carolina with any shot at winning, right? This is a state, South Carolina is a state where Joe Biden a year ago was up by 50 points. 50 points, all right? So take a moment to really process that fact that no candidate has ever won the first 3 states. It's never happened before. And a Democratic socialist just pulled it off. If that isn't validation, I don't know what is. So for a moment, just tune out all the BS on cable news and tune out all the narratives that are going to come out if Joe Biden is able to pull it off in South Carolina today. Because while we know that they will absolutely 100% use every dirty trick and tools of propaganda and superdelegates and all the rest to try to shut down this movement, to try to steal the nomination and rob the American people of what they have chosen and voted for, I have zero doubt in my mind that we will ultimately prevail. Zero doubt. Why do I know that? Because they're paper tigers, right? Just think about this. The New York Times, the vaunted New York Times, right? The paper of record. Who did they give their endorsements to? Their half-endorsement. Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren. Okay? As it stands today, Elizabeth Warren is not projected to even win one state. Not even her home state. And I have to say, and maybe some of you feel this way too, for me it's been tremendously sad to watch the devolution of Elizabeth Warren. This was someone who I personally, back in 2014, when it looked like, okay, Hillary Clinton's gonna get in this thing, and we could all see, right? It didn't take a rocket scientist to see that this was not gonna go well, that at a time of boiling populist anger and massive inequality and Wall Street bailouts, it didn't take a rocket scientist to realize that the lady who sat on the corporate board of Walmart and gave a bunch of secret speeches to Goldman Sachs and had this incredible coziness with Wall Street, that this wasn't going to go over well. And so when I went on MSNBC and I said, please don't run, please don't do this, this is going to be a disaster, who was the person that I said really stands for the values that we need right now, is really going to fight for the values that we need, is going to fight for working people, stood up to the Obama administration when that was uncomfortable? It was Elizabeth Warren, And to watch the way that she has backed away from this movement for cynical political opportunism, starting in 2016, when she didn't back her brother in the movement, supposed brother in the movement, Bernie Sanders, when she waited and did the politically calculated thing and decided instead to watch the way the wind was blowing, to read the tea leaves, and then sign up with the person who she had previously been so critical of, been so clear-eyed about, all in the service of hopefully positioning herself for more opportune political positioning. It's where it really all started. And so to watch her this cycle back away from Medicare for All, attack Bernie Sanders, accuse him of being some secret sexist in a disgusting ploy, to watch now as she buys into this whole toxic Bernie bros bullshit, it's incredibly disheartening. It's also incredibly revealing. The part of it that we should take comfort in, though, is that we have a test case here, right? Not only which kind of politics is morally right, which kind of politics do we believe in, but which wins elections. You can see it. When she collapsed down away from economic populism, abandoning the type of politician that she had come into politics as, and instead adopted this cynical politics of tokenism, trying to smear Bernie as a sexist, saying that the reason she'd be different as president is because she's going to wear a pink Planned Parenthood scarf on Inauguration Day. I'm sure that was, it's really going to help a lot of our brothers and sisters out there in the struggle. That kind of politics has completely failed, and Elizabeth Warren is the perfect emblem of that. We've got a few perfect emblems of that this cycle, I think. And yet, part of the reason why the media has gotten literally everything wrong this election cycle is because they think somehow that that is going to resonate. That if you're just speaking, if you're just signaling, if you're just engaging in this sort of wordplay and cultural signaling, that that's the politics that's going to land with the American people, when the evidence is all around us that people are hungry for real change, not just changing the gender ratio of our oppressors, but actually changing the reality of what it means for marginalized communities in this country. And so we know that we will prevail. We know that we will prevail because the media and the Democratic establishment that they partner with are hollow paper tigers that have lost all credibility within the American public. We see it, right? What have we been treated to over these past few weeks? Increasing hysteria from James Carville and Jonathan Chait and whoever, right? Chuck Todd, oh my God, the brown shirts. Chris Matthews, Bernie's movements, like when the Nazis took over France. I mean, these people have lost their minds. Carville, who, by the way, back in 2016 was telling Republicans they would be insane to nominate Trump because he would certainly lose. How did that work out for us? Has reemerged to say that Democrats must be insane to vote for Bernie Sanders. And what has happened while all of this hysteria and hand-wringing has been unfolding? What has happened? Number one, he's been winning. How about that? Hello, somebody, as someone might say. And what else? Now, not only do the American people tell pollsters routinely that Bernie Sanders is the candidate that they trust most on the issues, right, on healthcare, on climate, the two top issues that Democratic primary voters tell pollsters that they care most about. But while all of these people are out there hyperventilating about how Bernie Sanders isn't electable and he can't possibly beat Trump and it'll be a disaster for Democrats, et cetera, voters are now also telling pollsters that they see Bernie Sanders as the most electable candidate. And I don't think it's just that people are ignoring the media. I think they're actively saying, like, screw you to the media. Did you all see this moment on MSNBC? My former colleague, Ari Melber, some of you, yes, this is like one of the greatest hits, right? It was so beautiful. Let's recount it anyway. New Hampshire primary day. Ari Melber, MSNBC anchor, is out there in the field interviewing voters. Who are you voting for? Why are you voting for them? And he speaks with this one woman, who's a total hero in my view. And she says, I'm voting for Bernie, and I want to tell you why. She practically grabs the microphone from him. And she goes on to say, you know what? I was thinking about a lot of candidates. I was thinking about Amy Klobuchar. I was thinking about Elizabeth Warren. Okay, whatever. But I decided I'm going to vote for Bernie Sanders because your network has been so profoundly unfair to him, the way you've smeared him, that she specifically mentioned how they would say, well, he's really failing because he's not doing as well as he did in 2016 in New Hampshire when there was only one person in the race last time. And it's just so obvious. How many people are there that are out there, like this woman, who actively wants to say, you know what? You don't get to tell me how to think. You don't get to tell me what's possible. You don't get to tell me what type of politics to believe in. And the fact that you are so opposed to it strengthens my own conviction. How many of you all feel that way? I know I do. You know, most of this campaign, the media has, they started, their first tactic was to just kind of pretend like Bernie wasn't running at all. You know, they do these segments, they talk about every candidate that's running for president, but somehow not mention the guy who has the biggest movement in the country, millions of grassroots donations pouring in, solid base of support, diverse, young, energetic, biggest rallies, etc. They just would like pretend that he's not running, right? They would put out these hilarious headlines where they'd have a poll that uncomfortably for them Bernie was doing well in, and they'd say something like, you know, Pete Buttigieg in a fourth, but it's a strong fourth. You had people like professional wrong person Jason Johnson, who came out right from the jump, and here I have his quote here. He said about Bernie, he's done. This was back in January of last year. I was literally having this discussion with a good contact of mine on the campaign. I was like, I see Bernie Sanders launching the campaign, and by August, realizing he's not going to be in the top 5 in Iowa and dropping out. How did that work out? But these people just keep getting raises and keep getting promotions and keep getting paid to analyze the news. Nicole Wallace, right, on during the coverage of Nevada, as she was watching caucus after caucus result pour in with Bernie Sanders out to this humongous lead and dominating every last demographic group, she actually came out and said it. She said, I don't understand what voters think about anything anymore. I mean, at least she's honest, right? But she's paid so much money to be an expert on this. She has a daily show where she's supposed to be informing you about what's going on in the American public. But they have no clue. And she's not the only one who's said similar things to me privately in green rooms, on television. They have no clue what's going on. Why? Because they don't want to see it. Because it's not in their interest to see it, right? So many of these people who are on cable news every day, who are, populate the town, Washington, D.C., where we do the show out of, who, are given prominent placement in the New York Times, the Washington Post, who are called on for quotes. All these people, their whole model of the world, their whole model of how they earn their income, of how they have status and power, the whole reason they matter is crumbling before their eyes. Crumbling before their eyes. And they can't wrap their head around it. And when they do wrap their head around it, they really freak out about it. You would have thought that after 2016, or maybe after, getting duped into the Iraq War, or maybe after completely missing the financial crisis, covering up for banksters, you would have thought maybe after Russiagate only served to help President Trump and improve his approval ratings. You would have thought after some of these events, there would have been some soul searching. You would have thought that they would have gone back and said, how did I get this wrong, right? What am I missing in America? You would have thought that after 2016, when they completely underestimated, smeared, dismissed the Bernie Sanders movement, and then assured all of us there was no way Donald Trump could get elected, right? Jonathan Chait was saying, Democrats, go out and vote for Trump because he'll be so easy to beat. You would have thought after they got these things wrong that they would have done a reassessment, but they didn't. They didn't. Instead, all they did was come up with excuses, right? And look, like all good excuses, they have an element of truth. Russian interference, there's an element of truth there. Of course, they've turned it into this absolute neo-McCarthyist insanity that they're now trying to use to smear Bernie Sanders as well. Public's rejecting that too. There's an element of truth there. Element of truth that the Comey memo and when that dropped and all that, yeah, that shook up the race a bit. Element of truth, certainly sexism is a real thing, right? We can't dismiss that. Don't want to undercut that. But they used all of those various excuses to keep themselves from seeing the truth, which is that probably 70% of the American public who tell pollsters that they are disgusted and have a boiling anger at the political establishment, that 70% of America has no use for them. It sees right through the hollow rot of the neoliberal system in which inequality is a feature, not a bug, in which treating our working class citizens with less than humanity is a feature, not a bug, that so many Americans are ready to do anything to end that system. And let's be clear, too, it's not just here, right? Maybe they could have opened up their eyes and looked around the world, looked at where every corner of the globe has protest movement. And what are they about? Look, they're all different things and was sparked by a bus rate increase, a WhatsApp text increase, gas increase, right? Different sparks. But there's a common theme that has tied all of these protest movements together. And that is people are finished with the corruption, and they are finished with a neoliberal world order that has absolutely failed, sidelined, and dismissed them for decades now. And the fact that they don't look around and think about that they don't try to understand it, is exactly why all of these disingenuous, cynical political attacks on Bernie Sanders have fallen so flat, right? Fallen completely flat. Think about this. Think about this. At the lowest moment, we all watched, we got the news alerts on our phone that said Bernie Sanders had been hospitalized, that he was having stents inserted, and then we learned that he had actually had a heart attack. These people on the news, they thought it was over for him. They thought he should drop out. They thought he would drop out. They thought all of you would just abandon him and walk away and go to Elizabeth Warren. That's what they thought. Why did they think that? And why were they so wrong? Why was it that in that moment, we didn't walk away? We came together. We strengthened our resolve. AOC calls him in the hospital and says, "Brother, I am with you." They could never understand that kind of commitment, because for us, it's not about Bernie Sanders, right? Much as we love him, much as we admire him, much as we respect him, it's about the movement. It's about what things could be in this country. It's about the model that we could create, not just for this country, but a world that is looking for a better way. Do they really think that another demand for more medical records, or harping on his age, or saying, oh, people are too mean online, do they really think that's going to shake our faith? But they can't understand it. And that's why I am so confident that no matter what they throw at us, and by us, I really mean the majority of this country which stands with these values, no matter what they throw at us, we will prevail. Now, I do want to prepare you, because it's entirely possible that will be the first loss today. You know what the media will do with this. It'll be like the most disingenuous, cynical bullshit you've ever seen, right? In spite of the fact that every recent poll shows Bernie Sanders to be the winning candidate with every demographic group, right? With white people, with Latinos, with Asian Americans, with African Americans, they'll use this one result in this one state to say, see, black people don't like Bernie. Can't have him as a candidate. He's not the unity candidate. We need to add up. If we take Amy and Joe and Mike and Liz and Pete and put them all together, they're beating Bernie. And so that's the Super Friends ticket that we really need. That's what they're going to do. You know, I heard a new one this week. Thomas Friedman, I'm sure you all love. So he's been, you know, a primary advocate for this whole Super Friends idea. Like, this is not how elections work. You don't get to add everybody else together. Anyway. So he was on with Chris Cuomo on CNN. Did you all see this? And his new idea is that coronavirus will be the excuse to strip the nomination from Bernie Sanders. I'm not kidding. He said, 2 weeks' time, things will be totally different. Now, look, we'd have to take coronavirus serious. He might be right about the totally different thing. But the idea that coronavirus would be the reason to take the nomination from the guy who wants us all to have health care? These people are insane. But I also know that we are going to prevail because of you all, right? What was the number? How many canvassers? 348? 384. What other candidate, what other campaign, what other movement has people like you, not just here in Philly, in every city, in every state, in every town, in the whole entire country? You can't match that. You can't compete with that. Joe might have his little win today in South Carolina. That's fine. Super Tuesday's coming. And it's not coming long from now. We're talking about in a couple days it's coming. And when they see the results roll in from California and Utah and Colorado and Massachusetts and Vermont and Minnesota and Maine and Arkansas and Oklahoma and North Carolina, Virginia, all of these places, you and I are going to know, even if they continue to play their games and try to put together the super delegates and try to do the super friends, you and I know that this movement will not be stopped. That is the reality. And that brings us back to you all. You are the ones who through this whole time, you didn't accept the fairy tales, you rejected the status quo, you swam against the current, and you were the foot soldiers in this movement when everyone else counted you out. You have been doing the work. You have been preparing the soil for exactly this moment when those seeds that you planted over this year and many years previously started to sprout. They started to make their way up through the soil. And now, as they blossom all over the country, this movement and what it stands for, and the very radical idea that human beings should be treated as human beings, has become undeniable. And you will be the ones who understand, too, that an election is a great thing. Election is an important thing. It's an essential thing. But after that election is when the real work begins. This choice that you have made to believe, to dispense with the cynicism, to tell the powers that be that you see right through them, this is a choice of persistent struggle. We know that. It's also a choice of great reward. And so I want to thank you all. Thank you for engaging in that struggle. Thank you for being the beautiful little toxic Bernie bros that you are. And I want you to know that I encourage you and I stand with you in solidarity forever. Thank you all so much.